Hey, everybody. Happy Natural Wine Night. Say hi. Hi. Hi, everybody. I'm here. I'm really looking forward to this evening. A friend of mine asked me to teach this class quite a long time ago, actually. She asked me more than a year ago if I would teach a natural wine class. And I hesitated because I wasn't quite sure what the thread between the wines was going to be other than how they were made. And that was just not something that I'd really explored as like a teaching model before. For those of you who were with me last week, we talked about skin contact wines. And so it can be done. I can teach a class about wines where the commonality is how the wine is made, not so much where it comes from or the grape that it's made from or some sort of like flavor or aroma characteristics. So thanks for coming on the journey with me as we kind of explore new topics. So tonight we're going to talk about natural wine, but we're also going to be talking about conventional wine. So there's no way to talk about what natural means without talking about what most winemakers are doing. So I thought it made the most sense to kind of taste wine side by side so that you can kind of see the differences between a naturally made wine and a conventionally made wine. So I hope that if you weren't able to shop with us, you do at least have at least one pair of wines. That's my hope, is that everybody has at least one pair of wines made from the same grape, one made kind of in the natural low intervention methods and one kind of made in a more conventional method. So hopefully that's true. If you haven't joined us for class before, please use the chat bar. You guys are being very quiet tonight and it's making me uncomfortable. So please say hi or wave or something. I don't know. The chat bar really makes this class. Thanks, Alexis. Hi. Hello, Sean. Hi, thank you guys. See, there we go. Yay. All right, everything's okay. See, thank you guys. I was getting nervous. If you haven't joined us before, please do use the chat bar. It's how these virtual classes can feel a little more like we're all together, and it's definitely more fun that way. So please ask as many questions as you want as we're going through. Look at that. Hannah and Katie are together. It's like a class is happening and, you know, just we're all in our own spaces. So let's see, use the chat bar. If you haven't filled out the poll yet, please do. I would love to know kind of how many natural wine lovers we already had and how many people are, you know, kind of new to the game. Hi from another Katie. Hi. I'm going to do a little bit of talking to start. So if you want to pour something in your, never heard of natural wines. Well, Linda, tonight's your night. You're going to learn all about them. It's great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about winemaking. So if you want to pour yourself something to drink while I talk, let's do that because we're not going to dive into the drinking quite yet. So maybe get yourself a little something. So let's do it. So I'm going to share my slides with you guys. And I'm going to beat on this drum quite a bit tonight, where I really want it to be crystal clear that I do not necessarily equate natural with being better than conventional, or vice versa. I don't equate conventional being better than natural. I think that there's a time and a place for all of these wines. I think that you have to shop intelligently. And we'll talk about kind of how to do that. So I know that I'm the one who structured it, the natural versus conventional. I don't necessarily think that there needs to be a winner. I think that like, let's just drink wine and enjoy it all is kind of my intention with this class, but I do want to talk about like what the differences are between them. So there are kind of 4 major stops along the road of winemaking where the difference between natural and conventional really makes a huge difference, and you can physically see it and you can taste it and you can smell it and all of those things. So we're going to start with talking about the grapes themselves and how they're grown. These pictures came from a trip I took to Spain 2 years ago, and we were in Monterrey, which is far western Spain, just above Portugal, and I was visiting the winery on the left, but the land is kind of all together. So as we were standing on top of the mountain, it was really fascinating because the winemaker pointed out, like, okay, so here are our vineyards, right? And you can see there are wildflowers growing in between the vines and, just plants, and look how green and lush it is, right? And then we turn our backs and we like turn around, and he's like, and those are my neighbors, and they spray. They spray pesticides, they spray fungicides, they do all sorts of spraying, and you can like look at it. And to me, when I look at that land, I just think like, that doesn't look like fertile land, right? I mean, like we here in Wisconsin know what fertile land looks like. That to me doesn't look like something, I don't know, where things are going to grow necessarily. So when you are buying a natural wine, there's not yet any sort of certification for natural wine. So you're not going to necessarily see it on a label. Actually, you're not going to see it on a label. It's not going to be something that they're going to say. And because there's no certification with that, they don't necessarily have to be certified organic or certified biodynamic to kind of count as natural. But when somebody puts themselves out there and says that they are a natural winemaker, what they are saying is that the grapes are going to be grown in an organic, biodynamic, or sustainable way. Often it's like all three. And that they're not going to be using sprays of any kind, no pesticides. They might use natural ways of keeping pests away. But they really are trying to show the grapes as they are without really anything getting in the way of that. So it's really important to kind of, as we think about what we put into our bodies, generally speaking, if you're the type of person to shop at the co-op or, do deep research before you buy a piece of meat so that you know the farmer, maybe this really resonates with you and you're like, oh, I definitely want to buy grapes that look like the one on the left. And if you're like, hey man, like I buy what's on sale because I live on a budget, or I kind of care sometimes, but I don't always care. Maybe you buy grapes on the right. And I really, again, like I don't want to come across as being judgy, because I'm not, because I drink both things. I drink wines in both categories. I'm way pickier about food than I am about wine. So that's just the kind of the first stop on the road there. So then the second kind of stop is the harvesting. And please do let me know if you have questions about this or want me to go back to any of these pictures. I'm happy to. So with the harvesting, natural winemakers are going to do everything by hand. Yeah, Nikki, I will explain biodynamic for sure. I will. Just let me get through harvesting, and then I will circle back to that question about biodynamic. So natural winemakers are going to harvest things by hand, which looks pretty much exactly like that picture. It can be kind of back-breaking work depending on where the vineyards sit. It's not easy, and it requires actual manual labor. Conversely, conventional wines can be harvested by machine. I did pick, like, in my opinion, like the scariest picture of like these like tractors coming at you, like all in a row. Kind of like, I don't know, in my mind, they were like military tanks coming at me. But they, they're going to be machine harvested. So what does that mean, other than like the obvious? Okay, so somebody's picking it and somebody's driving a tractor. The biggest difference is that as they are picking the grapes by hand, they're not necessarily sorting right there, like as they cut, right? They're going to put it in the bin and then they're going to sort. But there are hands on the grapes themselves. And there are people looking to make sure that what they are cutting are the stems and the grapes, and that's it. Versus the machine, where you could be getting the stems and the grapes, but then also some leaves. And depending on what kind of machines you're using, it could be literally kind of raising those rows of vines. And picking up all sorts of stuff. And when I say all sorts of stuff, what do I mean? I mean like birds' nests or animals, things that, you don't really want in your wine, right? And if the vines have been sprayed, now you're just like taking it, and like swooping it all into the vat to make the wine from. That's just like another place where you don't necessarily know what's in your wine. And, this is another place for me to pause and say like, and maybe that matters to you and maybe it doesn't. But that's for you to decide. So the question of like studies showing harms of sprays or benefits of drinking one over the other. Yeah, there's some really good information out there. I mean, just like as you can expect from, let's say organic milk versus not organic milk, right? There are definitely benefits to one over the other. We're going to talk about kind of what winemakers do to kind of make the wines taste good, having used chemical sprays and having, bird's nests been machine harvested into the wine. So we'll get there. But the sprays themselves, people can have allergic reactions to them. And most often when people talk about red wine headaches or headaches from wine, 99 times out of 100, it's because they're having a reaction to pesticides that are either sprayed on the grapes or chemicals that are put in the wine. And it might be both of those things. So I always tell people if they come in and they're like, I think I have a sulfite allergy. I am allergic to tannins. I'm like, yeah, sulfite allergies are super rare. Tannin allergies are also very rare. You wouldn't drink coffee if you had a tannin allergy. You couldn't eat French fries if you had a sulfite allergy. So how about we try you on some natural wines or some like, I often steer people like, let's try European wine first and see if that makes a difference, because just the things that are allowed in the EU versus what we in the US allow, kind of like COVID, they are stricter about their rules there than we are. And so often that can be a change for people. So I hope that answers your question, Jean. Yes, there are definitely studies. You can definitely read up on this. Wineries don't have to disclose what they use. They do not have to disclose what sprays they are using. So if it matters to you, if you read some research and you're like, holy, I have like the fear in me now, then that's incumbent upon you, unfortunately, to do the work of at least finding the wineries that you can trust, or, maybe you can just drink European wine. Is there a guesstimate of production natural versus conventional? Yeah, natural is pretty small. It is definitely a small percentage. It is growing for sure. It is the hot market. But yes, conventional wines are definitely still kind of like the way things are. I want to circle back to Nikki's question about biodynamic. So I think we all are good on the concepts of organic and concepts of sustainable. Biodynamic, as quickly as I can, let me say biodynamic is a set of principles, not just used for winemaking. It's a set of principles used in farming, where every aspect of the farming is in harmony with the earth. So there's a lot of attention paid to the cycle of the moon and the seasons. There are some really ancient practices of burying animal bones in the vineyards in the thoughts that those kind of protect the vines from certain pests and those kinds of things. Everything is grounded in reality. When I first learned about it, it kind of sounded a little like when you first learn about Wicca, if you know anything about the Wiccan religion, like it kind of feels like to maybe somebody in a more traditional household, like that just sounds a little hippie, or like that sounds like a little weird. But then when you start to learn about it, it's like kind of that makes a lot of sense. And being, following biodynamic principles really just means that you're trying not to harm the earth. So maybe I am a hippie. I'll take that label. So that's the long and the short of it, Nikki. there is biodynamic certification, the way that there is organic and sustainable certification. It's quite expensive, and it's like the most rigorous. They do a lot of checks, and so a lot of wineries that are practicing biodynamic do not have the certification because they don't want to try to keep it up, even though they do follow all the practices. It's just too much. So shout out other questions, but I'm going to keep on going from the harvesting. From harvesting, we go to yeast. So this is definitely something that I think the average wine drinker does not think about, and that's okay because it's my job to think about it, not yours. But here we are tonight, and you're going to think about it for a hot second. So my daughter peeked in on me as I was making the slides today, and she was like, "So what's that? Like, what's this slide about? Tell me about this." And I basically said, like, you can think of it like on the left is sourdough, and on the right is commercial yeast. It's almost exactly the same thing. So with natural wines, you're going to use the native yeasts that are found on the grape skins. There is yeast in the air in the wineries. There's yeast in the air in the vineyards, and all of those things are used to make the wine. So they're not going to inoculate the wine. Conversely, winemakers might choose to use commercial yeast. There are wineries that have, like their house strain, as you might expect, right? That's a very brewery kind of thing to have like the house yeast that you always use. And the biggest reason for that, and this point in the winemaking is really kind of where a lot of natural wine got its bad name, was that when you are relying on native yeasts, it's unpredictable. If any of you bake sourdough, as I know many of us have been doing during lockdown, it doesn't always rise the way that you think it's going to rise, right? The grapes aren't going to ferment on the timeline that you necessarily have laid out for yourself. And if you are a super small production and it's like you and 3 people and you're just making wine to see what can happen, you're probably okay with that. If you are a multi-million-dollar winery and you know that you have already sold through the vintage that you're currently trying to make, you're not okay with that. You need to get that wine made. And so you want commercial yeast. And you're just going to use, the yeast that you've kind of always been using. What happens with that unpredictability, I don't know how many of you bake or make beer, but if something is like supposed to be fermenting but isn't, or is slowly fermenting instead of quickly fermenting, it's sitting there and it is attracting bacteria, and things can get into that wine that you might not want. So that would be the pro-commercial yeast statement, is like, hey, when I use this, I know it ferments. I know it ferments those things out, versus it's kind of sort of bubbling, and I think there's some weird bacteria getting in there. So that's that stop. And then the last stop is additives, which is really kind of part of the larger winemaking stop, right, where they go. So the picture on the left is actually the Cirelli Montepulciano that we're going to taste in a little bit. That is the winery itself. That's them in their ancient amphora that they love. I can't really find a picture of people not adding stuff to wine. So I picked the picture of kind of like what I think of as like quintessential natural winemaker, right? Like a little hipster using his amphora, but he's not putting anything in the wine. He's just checking on it and making sure that that's how it is. Why I say that there's little to know. So with natural winemakers, they may use, and many do, they may use a little bit of sulfites, a little bit at bottling to keep the wines shelf stable. Sulfite is not the end of the world. Sulfites are not the most evil thing that has ever been created. It's kind of like, I don't know, I feel like sulfites are the MSG of the wine world, where like we all think we hate them and we don't know why, even though they're the thing that makes wine drinkable for most of us. So natural winemakers are not necessarily going to use zero sulfites. There are some wineries that do. Cirelli, I think, is a great example. They say very explicitly on their website that they try to use, or that they use as little sulfites as possible, There are certain wines of theirs that they use no sulfites on, and they tell you on the tech sheet on their website. You can look it up and you can see how much they use. Other wineries I've seen, they will tell you like the actual amount of SO2 that they are using. On the other side, within the conventional wine world, there are a lot of things that you can add. The most prominent one is Mega Purple, which you see on the right. So when I was talking about, those big machine harvesters swooping down and picking up foxes and whatever the hell else they're putting in the wine, you make that wine with that, your commercial yeast, and you taste it and it doesn't taste very good. Maybe it does, but maybe it doesn't. And so you need your wine to taste good, because if you are using these practices, you probably are in the market of making a lot of money, and that's okay. So that's where additives come into play. So something like a Mega Purple is not regulated. It's not regulated by the FDA. Wineries do not have to disclose that they are using it. And I guarantee you that almost every commercial red wine in California is using it. Going back to the why do I get headaches thing, which nobody asked me, but I'm just kind of like preempting the questions there. People think that they get headaches from sulfites. And I said you could get headaches from sprays, or you could get headaches from things like Mega Purple. These are chemicals that are designed to taste and smell a certain way. Mega Purple is super, super concentrated. It looks like purple ink. So when you put it into a wine, the wine looks this like beautiful, deep, rich color. And you have this instant reaction of like, I want to drink that, right? It just looks luscious, right? It looks like liquid velvet. And this is where, again, I'm going to say, like, that's up to you to decide if you care about it or not. I'm not going to tell you what you should do. I'm going to tell you that you can care about it or not care about it, but wineries don't have to tell you. So if you do care about it, you got to, kind of go out of the way to not drink those wines. Does that mean, oh my God, that you thought that the Mega Purple was a joke, right? So when I Googled Mega Purple, like there are just like so many of them. It's not a joke. It's very real. It's super, super real. And I promise you, if you have, bought a $5 bottle of red wine at Trader Joe's, you've had some Mega Purple. And so like, maybe you're like, yeah, man, I buy that $5 bottle at Trader Joe's all the time and I don't get a headache. Well, great. Then keep doing it. To Alexis's question about natural wines might not be things you want to hold on to for too long. I think it really varies. There are natural wineries that have been around for generations, and they can age their wines for quite a long time. I'm thinking of like Francois Cazin. If any of you joined us for the Sauvignon Blanc class, the French Sauv Blanc that we all drank, or most of us drank, the Cazin Cheverny, he's a natural winemaker. And that's a wine that I would easily say, like, you could lay that wine down for a few years and see how it changes over time. So I'm not 100% able to say, yeah, don't ever sell our natural wines, or you have to sell our conventional wines. So it's not totally. I think it's a little more per winery. Why do natural wines explode when you open? Is that a lack of sulfites? So Karina, honestly, I guess, first of all, did either of the natural wines that we have tonight explode on you? Mine didn't. I'll say that. I just did that and it didn't. And the Happy didn't do it to me either. No, just in past experiences. Yeah. So I ask for that, for the reason, because I want to say, like, well, I was going to get to it. How about this? Let's pour ourselves some wine. Let's taste a little bit of wine. And then it's going to kind of lead me, answering Karina's question is going to kind of lead me where we were going to go while we drank Chenin Blanc. So let's pause on that for a hot sec and just drink some wine. This is just a picture of the Chenins. The slides here are pretty minimal because it's really about, what you're drinking. So drink up, guys. I do recommend the side-by-side. If you're able to have 2 glasses, I really, really recommend it. I think that it's the best way to kind of, be able to go back and forth between them. Let me know what you're smelling and you're tasting and how things are going. You can start with either. So we're starting with the Chenins. You can start with either. From an alcohol point of view, I would say the Happy is significantly lower than the Le Col. The Happy has 2% lower alcohol. So I would probably start with the Happy, but I realized that I just talked for quite a while. So just drink whatever you want. just drink. Go ahead, do it. So I love that comment from Jason. What the hell's wrong with this wine? So when I was picking the wines for tonight, the things that I wanted to make sure I did was pick wines that are, here, sorry, I'll put it against the white because I know some of you might not have the wine. I wanted to pick wines that were noticeably natural and noticeably conventional, I guess I would say, without taking you into like all of the funk that ever did funk, like the weirdest, savoriest, most barnyardy wines, because I think that natural wines get a bad rap, that they all smell like poop, that they all smell terrible and they taste weird and they have flaws and all that stuff. And I didn't want to do that. So when I tasted the Happy a few weeks ago, I was like, this wine makes me so happy. But what's wrong with it? Jason says, what the hell's wrong with that wine? It's unfiltered. It's 100% unfiltered. It is aged in sandstone jars, which I think is just like an amazing phrase, and stainless steel tanks. So the unfiltered thing, I think you feel it and you can see it a little bit. It's not super, super cloudy, but one of the things that, and this goes back to Karina's question, the pro-natural wine side of the argument is like, I know that weird stuff's not being put in my wine. I know that weird stuff isn't being sprayed on the grapes. I know that basically it's the grapes. Like I'm just tasting the grapes more or less. There's really nothing else getting in the way, right? Again, going back to the sourdough comparison, it's like I'm really just kind of tasting the flour or the grain, right? I'm not really tasting anything else. The cons in the natural wine column, I guess the cons column would say that because there's very low intervention, there's a very hands-off approach to things, that can mean that there are flaws in the wine. When I was talking about those bacteria getting in during fermentation, that can lead to Brettanomyces, which if any of you drink sour beer, Brettanomyces is the bacteria that makes sour beer taste sour. And that can be super appealing to some wine drinkers. And it can be a total turnoff to others. When I first started encountering natural wines, the natural wines that I had were like so, for lack of a better term, like natty, like so, like I don't know, like, yeah, I don't want to say anything disparaging, just like like they were basically the kombucha of wine. And that's not saying that anything bad about kombucha, but I'm saying like they literally tasted like kombucha, right? And Karina mentioned why do they explode? Like they'd be fizzy and not intentionally fizzy, like they were bottled before fermentation was complete. And that is the answer to your question, Karina. Natural wines may be bottled before they actually should be. If they had more sulfite added, it would kill the yeast. Which is what sulfite does. Sulfite is there to preserve the wine and to kill any bit of fermentation that might be happening. That's the sulfite's job. So if you have low sulfite or no sulfite, you can get these really off aromas, these really savory aromas. And so those flaws come through. And I think that sometimes, because it is a trend, because it is a market share that's, people are going after, people get on the natural wine train and they jump on it and they make wine and they don't necessarily do it well. And they package it all pretty and it looks cool on Instagram and the wine tastes bad. Like it's literally flawed. I'm super happy to say that in the 4.5 years Table Wine has been open, what I am seeing is that now natural wine is moving more towards the kinds of wines I picked out for you guys tonight. Where they're delicious, they're interesting, right? A non-sour wild ale, Heather, is like exactly it, right? It's exactly it. It's wild fermentation, exactly like a wild beer is, but it's not so weird, It's like lemon and sourdough, right? It's like a piece of sourdough bread with some lemon curd on it or something along those lines. Alexis is saying nutty. The tropical fruit on the Le Col. I love this wine. Like I picked this wine because I love the Le Col. I don't want to disparage it at all. I didn't want to pick conventional versions that were like real bad, like really bad. Right? Like I'm not like trying to go out of my way to be like, see, so you have to drink the happy. Yeah, I'm really glad to see that this is a pleasant experience for Jean, the banana-y part. Yeah, I totally agree. Right. And like, if I know some of you do drink a fair amount of beer, like Saison, right? Saison, that's a tasting note for Saison very frequently is banana. And I think that that's like a pleasant, happy thing. While you're drinking, and please do keep kind of making comments. Let me know what you think of the Le Col as well. And, kind of the difference between them. The other cons that I would say, the knocks against natural wine, or why I'm not just like a natural wine shop, because definitely customers have asked me if I would consider just only selling natural wines. The inconsistencies. It's a great thing. It's an interesting thing. It means that the 2018 Happy Chenin is going to taste very different than the 2019 Happy Chenin, because it's different yeast, because so much is different from one year to the next. But those inconsistencies can be challenging as a wine purveyor. They can be challenging for you guys. You're like, hey, I really liked that Happy. And then you get, the bottle of the next vintage and you're like, well, shit, that doesn't taste anything like what I remembered it tasting like. And, often it's not like completely different, but it can be, significantly different. It can be significantly different within a vintage. You can taste a wine when it's like the beginning of the vintage and the end of the vintage. And it can be very different, right? Because going back to Alexis's question about aging, not all natural wines necessarily are intended to age, or it might not even be that one is better or worse. It's just different. And that's hard. That's hard from a wine sales standpoint. We have at times put natural wines on by the glass that haven't worked because they can't last more than a day. You open them and they taste fabulous for the first night, and then the second night they're kaput. And we need to be able to get more than a day out of a bottle of wine. So there's that part of it. And then the other part that I will say, I don't know how many of you noticed or necessarily cared, but I would say price is the other kind of like the big thing, right? These are hand harvested, low, projects of love, basically, right? Like you can't make these wines quickly. You can't rush this. If you rush it, you're going to get the flawed wine that explodes. And so they have to make a little bit more money to be able to do this. And therefore the price on natural wine is definitely higher. It just is across the board. Right. So I picked 2 US Shennons, with a price difference of about $7, I believe. I picked 2 Montepulcianos from the exact same region in Italy. And again, I think the difference was like $8. So Karina, to circle back to your question, natural does not necessarily mean, it doesn't necessarily mean organic. It does mean organic, sustainable, or biodynamic. However, it might not be certified. But if you are going to make a natural wine, you are going to grow grapes in the most hands-off way possible. So, yeah. Yeah. Jean, I mean, I totally agree with you about having had some problems with inconsistencies between, or having had some like really bad natural wine. I absolutely agree with you. I have had some that I mean, I really had sworn it off as like, nah, man, I'm not going to do it, because it just like, I would get we were getting returns, and I was having to say to customers, like, I will take the return, but that actually is how the wine is supposed to taste, because they're like, I think I got a bad bottle. And I'm like, no, like that's actually the wine. That's like how the winemaker intended it for it to taste. And that's not a good position to be put in. I don't like that. So, yeah. Oh, Sean, I'm glad. I love the lake hole. Katie, why you might thought it might be a mead or something? I mean, because you look at it and it, what's the drink that you've had that kind of looks like that? Probably mead, right? Like it has that look about it. I think that's totally clear. Oh, Jean, I'm so glad. I'm so glad that that's why you took this class. That's great to hear. One of the other reasons that I picked the Lake Hole specifically, other than just like I like it, I think it tastes like pineapple and it's really good with Thai food. Hannah and Katie, some folks that were joining us for class, asked me for food pairing suggestions. And I was like, well, the whites are super different than the reds, so I don't know what you want to do for dinner. But I did say Shannon's always great with really spicy food. So, make a spicy stir fry or get some Thai food. But one of the reasons I wanted to pick the Lake Hole specifically, as I was kind of going through the stops on the road of how the grapes are grown, how they're harvested, the additives that are put in, the yeast that are used, the natural information is true for all natural wines. The information about conventional is all the options that are available to conventional wineries. They don't necessarily do all of those things. So in the instance of Lake Hole, they are certified sustainable, and they have been for decades. And they are at the forefront of sustainability in Washington State. So they do grow their grapes sustainably. So for the first slide, if we went back, let's go back for a hot second. Sorry, give me 1 second. So if we're back here, they both grow their grapes. And they both, both Brock Cellars and Lake Hole look something like the one on the left, right? And then they harvest by hand as much as possible, but they do harvest some of the plots of land by machine. So it's like kind of a 50-50, and they do use native yeast. So I think it's a really good example of how it's not all or nothing necessarily with commercial wines. So, and, I think that that's my job and not necessarily your job to know all of that information about a wine. And I can't promise you that I know all of that information about all of the wines, but if you tell me that you care, and that that's like something really important to you, and that you want, you want to make sure that whatever step along the road is like the important, or maybe they're all important and you just buy natural, we can kind of help you with those steps along the road. All right, any questions or thoughts about the Shannons before we leave them? Totally, Brock Cellars did, like, by the way, I agree with all of you. They did a super good job with their packaging because, they're in downtown Berkeley. They know what they're doing. They know how to get people to buy wine. But I just think like this is what's lovely about natural wine, right? It's 11.5%. You could drink that sucker like all day long. You know, Patty, there's only one Patty tonight, so I can just say Patty, and I mean male Patty. Irish Patty. Irish Patty said to me recently, like, you've been talking about brunch a lot. Apparently I have been. In every class I talk about brunch drinking. But I do think the Happy would be a great brunch drink. So if you need a brunch drink, I don't know if it'll make it till Saturday. Maybe have brunch tomorrow. Any questions before we head off the, see, yay, right? Any questions before we leave, Shannon? Okay, all right. So in case you're not drinking with us at home or you don't have the wines or whatevs, we are tasting side by side Montepulcianos from Abruzzo. And if you don't know the difference between Montepulciano the grape and Montepulciano the place, go back and watch Italian Reds because it was a fabulous hour. Maybe that one was the first one. Was that the first one, guys? I feel like that was the 1.5 hour long one with 5 wines. I think it was. You should go back and watch it and learn about Montepulciano because it's fantastic. So you can see on the Torelli, if you have the Torelli at home, and if you don't here, I will hold it up. The Torelli is certified organic. So they do actually say that, and they have the little green leaf that you can look for wines from the EU when they are certified. And they have like a cute little ladybug on the label because they're saying like there are ladybugs out in our vineyards, and isn't that so great? So Torelli is incredibly forthcoming, and I have found that most natural winemakers, if they have websites, they're usually really good. Now they might not have websites because some natural winemakers are, like Francois Cazin that I mentioned earlier, the French winemaker, he's like worried about his wines and he's not like tech savvy necessarily. So his websites are not that awesome, but with kind of the younger generation of natural winemakers, I would say that like a lot of times you can find a ton of information on their websites. You can find, the names of the vineyards and how much sulfites they are adding and all that kind of stuff. So, so I mentioned earlier the consistency question out there about the fact that natural wines can be inconsistent. The Cinta, the conventional one, we've been carrying for a few vintages now, and it tastes almost exactly the same every single time. Yep, it tastes like that. That's what it tastes like. And I think as a wine store owner, it's really good to have those wines to just kind of know. I think as a consumer, it can be very nice to know that, like, I remember that wine. I like that $10 red. It's good for parties, or it's good for my pizza night. I know that I can always get that, or I can fall back on that when I, don't have anything else in mind. That can be that kind of wine, right? Versus something like the Torelli. This is a brand new vintage. I have not actually tasted this vintage yet. I had the 2017. And they can just be different. And I don't necessarily think that all conventional wines are just drinking, but the difference between like the thinking wine and the drinking wine, I think in this specific case, there's like the thinking and the drinking. Although that Torelli is pretty darn drinkable, if I do say so myself. What do you guys think? How are the reds? How's the side bites? You really love the Torelli. Yeah. I'm really glad. It was very important to me. I think with natural whites, you can definitely get funk. But I think with natural reds, the kind of like the automatic place that people's brain goes is like funk. right? It smells like a barnyard, or it, it doesn't taste right, or like Band-Aids, right? Like those kinds of like not pleasant aromas. And so it was very important to me that I pick one that is just kind of just delicious. It's totally bright, right? It definitely has really nice acidity. If you are having pizza, if you happen to be having pizza tonight, or pasta, something like that, it's just like, it's going to match with those tomatoes so beautifully. It also has no filtration, no filtering. And you could definitely get the tannins, but then I do also think you get some of that like texture on the tongue as well. And that is something that that does definitely set natural wines apart from conventional wines. Not all conventional wines are filtered and fined, but it's a much more common practice. So if you kind of enjoy textured wine, perhaps natural wines are kind of like a good way for you to go. How are other people feeling? You guys are quiet now. What happened? I gotta say, personally, I feel like the Chinta smells funkier. I feel like the Chinta smells more smoky and like a little meatier than the Chiarelli. You're thinking very hard. Keep thinking very hard, guys. Sean's note about it feels like the Chiarelli has a little bit more character. And that's when I always think of those as like the thinking wines versus the drinking wines, right? Like I kind of want to see how this opens up, right? It has a little bit more nuance to it. Yeah, and like the smell of the Chinta, like straight up, I don't know how many times I've tasted that wine, a lot. And that's really what it smells like every single time. Like that's how that wine smells. Alexis is asking if tasting notes are pretty similar with natural wines. Like what the common flavors and aromas are. Yeah, for the most part, yes. I think that you can sometimes with natural wines see kind of the more savory side of grape description. So if you're given, I don't know, in the case of, I'm trying to think of something like we're not tasting here tonight. Let's talk about Chardonnay. If you are looking at like all of the possibilities of Chardonnay, and pardon me, you have like ripe apple and buttered popcorn, and then you also have like saline, white mushrooms. You might see in a natural wine that like it leans more towards that, but it's not like out of left field. Here comes this flavor or aroma. Like the intention with natural wines is that you are tasting the grapes. So if you're using Wine Folly, which I love and I always recommend it, ideally, the point of these wines is that you would be tasting the grape in its more pure form. So yeah, you should be able to, continue to use that. Oh, that's great. Enjoy the night. Enjoy the red some other night. That's totally fine. That was like no pressure. Just, I wondered if everybody was like, meh, I don't like these wines. I picked them based on the popularity of the Montepulciano and Italian Reds class. So that's why I picked Montepulciano. So I've mentioned kind of websites and research and stuff like that. It is interesting to me. I can't tell you much of anything about how Chinta is made. And I think that that's not that uncommon where conventionally made wines don't necessarily shout it from the rooftops that they, use acidification or, whatever, that kind of thing. Les Cols is really pretty forthcoming. I think that they do a really nice job. They are as transparent as a conventional winery I've seen. So I do think that. Are blends common in natural wines, or are they more typically one varietal? I think it just depends on where in the world you're talking about, because it really kind of follows more the regional norms. So, in the Rhone, they're natural blends, right? Languedoc, Roussillon, like southeastern France, like they're blends, right? If you know the La Patience wines, the wines with the hands on them, we have the rosé and the red and the white. Those are all blends, and those are all natural. So not necessarily. I wanted to go as straightforward as possible. I wanted to not get into well, in this case, the Syrah adds this note to it, right? I just kind of wanted to keep it super straightforward and simple. So the last thing that I kind of want to mention is how, if you leave tonight and you're like, okay, I am into natural wines. Actually, I'm going to see how many of you. Okay, so it's an even split between never having purchased natural wines before and sometimes, but not always. If you leave tonight and you're like, okay, I want to explore this more, or this is cool and I want to find these wines more often, or, for Jean and Karina and others, maybe like them, we're like, hey guys, it's not all, exploding barnyard awfulness out there. Natural wines can be super delicious. How do you find them? There are importers who specialize in natural wines. So that would be the first, not necessarily the first, but that's one place that you can kind of go and figure that out. I have some listed there. Jose Pastor specializes in Spanish wines, Iberian Peninsula wines. Jenny and Francois, mostly French, not surprisingly. Zevrovine is kind of Europe. Kind of like a mixed bag of Europe. Des Maisons is French and Spanish. So Des Maisons is not exclusively natural, but they really do vet their wineries quite well. And I feel super confident telling you to go buy Des Maisons wines anytime you want. Other ways to find the natural wines, get to know wineries. So Brock Cellars, for example, makes a whole bunch of wines. So if you liked the Happy, you can, seek out more wines from Brock Cellars. Chirelli also makes a fairly wide array of wines, so you can do that, and you can ask, right? And I know that sounds like, yeah, well, you're the lady who owns the wine store, but I'm the lady who owns the wine store, man. So ask me, that's what I'm here for. If you are not in Madison and have to shop somewhere else, well, actually, I should say, no matter where you live and you shop somewhere and you ask them if they know, do you have any natural wines, or I'm looking for a natural wine, but I don't really want the funky side, or maybe you do want the funky side. I don't mean to speak for you, but if you get the pushback of I don't really know, or I don't know, all natural wines are weird, or any, kind of meh, or they don't have the information, I highly recommend that you shop somewhere else. And yeah, I'm just going to say that. I think that if you, if you live in Madison and you can't shop with us, please shop with Andrea at Square Wine, because she knows the answers to those questions. Shop at the Steve stores on the west side of on University, and they'll know. So, I don't know if locals shop with other people, but I'm just saying that I'm not the only one who knows this stuff, but I am saying if somebody doesn't know the answer, think long and hard about whether you want to keep shopping there. Alexis, I'm really glad to hear that you want to keep exploring it. The skin contact class was, I think, eye-opening for a lot of people, and I hope that this class was. Oh, thanks, Linda. I appreciate that. I hope this class was equally kind of eye-opening. The one thing that I will say is, if you love natural wine, you're going to have to be open to people running out of the thing you love and having to turn to a new thing and make a new love. And you have to be a little more open, because, for instance, with the Brock Cellars, they made, I think 850 cases of the Happy. The Chiarelli Montepulciano actually is like, there's a decent supply of it, but like often you can find that you know, as soon as you fall in love with a natural wine, it's gone. I posted on Instagram late last week, and I put on our website this natural red called Glue Glue. It's gone. You know, it's gone. And I got one case, you know, and I was super excited about the one case, and I had to share it with people, and I didn't want to just like, you know, have it sit on the shelf and no one know about it. But that is kind of part of the game. So, you know, I know, I'm sorry it's already gone. I know, guys, I'm sorry. I love you though. But there are other ones out there, right? That's my point, is like, just don't get too married to the specific one, right? So I'm really glad that you like these two wines. I am going to try to have them in stock, but you know, like, just don't be surprised if in a couple of months it's like, hey man, it's natural wine. Like they sold through it and it's gone. I love seeing these notes about the Costco things. I just love it. Yeah, man, right? When I'm talking about the mega purple, right? I'm talking about the additives that they put in wine and all the stuff that makes you feel bad. You know, that's what I'm talking about. More like mega death. I love it, right? I mean, it's no joke. It really does make you feel pretty terrible. Yeah, I don't think there was anything else. I feel like I was like on a tangent. I was like on a tangent there. I think my tangent came to an end. Do I still have the Christina Rosé? Yes, more arrived today. So indeed. And see, like, that's a natural wine and that's delicious. And I think that like you can explore natural wines. And I would say I definitely picked the shallow end of the pool. I picked the kind of like the friendlier side of things. And I think that doing that can really open people's eyes. I hope it did for some of you, like, to the fact that it's just delicious Chenin Blanc from California. It's just Montepulciano. It happens to be natural. Oh, cool, great. It has all of those added bonuses of being organic and like low intervention. And like, I know that there's not extra stuff in my wine. That's awesome. But my mom, she just wants a nice tasting bottle of red wine. And that's what I love about natural wine. I read earlier today, a sommelier said, there's a natural wine in almost every category. So if you are like, I like Chardonnay and that's all I want to drink, you know, you can continue to drink Chardonnay and just explore natural Chardonnay. Now, it's not going to taste necessarily like buttered popcorn every time. Natural winemakers don't tend to use heavy oak, right? So it might be a slightly different flavor profile than you're used to, but you can find natural wine that still is just kind of enjoyable and approachable, that kind of thing. Any questions before we? Oh, good. I'm really glad. I'm assuming that's Kristen who's typing that and not Patty, because I know that Kristen's a little hesitant about natural wine. Maybe it's Patty. I don't know. Yeah, Funkiverse, right? I get it. I totally get it. And I think like you like the Kazan, right? You liked that Cheverny from Sauv Blanc class. That's natural. You know, I was really excited when we did the skin contact, right? Like those all, I love Sean's note. You know, the skin contact wines are really hands-off, low intervention, right? Like all of those things. And you saw a wide array of flavors and aromas. I'm really glad, Jean. I'm really glad you learned a lot. I'm really glad that I can say like, hey, not all natural wine tastes like body odor. That's a good thing, right? Alexis, you're saying that you're going to California in October makes me scared. Just heads up. I'm just like, I don't know. I'm a nervous Nelly about COVID. So take care of yourself if you travel, guys. That's just like me, the mom and me saying that. All right, we are at time. If there are questions, now's the time. Otherwise, I just announced July classes. We have French Reds coming up. If you've taken French Reds before, take it again, because I'm going to pick all new wines that you haven't had before. And it's, you know, it's just fun and different. We have Riesling class, and I think everyone needs to take Riesling class. It has the lowest sign-up numbers, I noticed, because People think they don't like Riesling, and I'm a Riesling evangelist, so please take the Riesling class. And then at the end of July, we're doing component tasting again. So that's where you kind of smell an item that a wine either smells or tastes like, and it really gels it in your mind. So that class is super fun, and I really am looking forward to it. Karina, we don't have Hedges Syrah, so we carry the CMS always. We always have the CMS on the shelf. We can totally, as long as the distributor has the Hedges Syrah, we can always order it for you. So we get deliveries from Left Bank on Wednesdays and Fridays. So if you let us know either by Tuesday or by Thursday, not Thursday at 7, Thursday at 4, we could get it for you within a few days. Oh, good, Heather. I'm really glad. Natural whites are super fun. They are perfect drinking for the summer. And natural rosés too. They're really good for warm. Okay, good. I'll just send you pause vibes about your trip to California. We can just leave it there. All right, everybody. It's great to see all of your names and all of the chats. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad that you liked all the wines. Let me know. Let me know if you have questions. Bye, guys.